CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wilson. Our top stories this hour. A warning to separatists. The Chinese army launches military drills around the island of Taiwan. The state of emergency in British Columbia. Thousands have been ordered to evacuate as Canada's wildfires worsen. Joining forces on green technology, China and Denmark reach a new agreement. The World Athletics Championships are underway in Budapest with more than 2,000 of the world's star athletes vying for gold. China has begun joint air and sea military exercises around the island of Taiwan. The People's Liberation Army said the maneuvers were a warning to Taiwanese separatists. Dozens of warships, fighter jets and land-based missile launchers have been deployed. Military officials say the drills are meant to improve their capacity for cooperation. The exercises come after the Taiwan region's deputy leader Lai Ching-te made a stopover in the United States. Beijing has urged the Biden administration to keep its promise to uphold the One China principle.
China again urges the U.S. to abide by the One China principle in the three China-U.S. joint communiques, to honor its commitment of not supporting Taiwan independence or two Chinas or One China, One Taiwan, to stop all forms of official interaction with Taiwan.
Our reporter Xu Jiaxin has more on the drills from Fujian province across the strait from Taiwan.
The foreign ministry said that China would take forceful measures to resolutely safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity. So on Saturday, the PLA Eastern Theater Command said it conducted combat-oriented joint military exercises focusing on the coordination of naval and air forces and acquire controls of targets in the sea and airspace near the Taiwan island in a move to send what it called stern warnings to the collusion between foreign forces and Taiwan separatists. As we know that Beijing firmly opposes formal exchanges between the U.S. and the Taiwan region, and upon these occasions it would routinely launch military patrols and exercises. Lai's stopover in New York and San Francisco this time has suggested that the Biden administration remains alert to what the separatist-minded Lai previously said about Taiwan's leaders entering the White House. Lai, also the candidate for next year's leadership election, has declared himself a pragmatic worker for Taiwan independence, and that's why Beijing accuses Washington of conniving at Taiwan independent separatists and their activities, hollowing out the One China principle and betraying the provisions of the three joint communiques. Now, Beijing reiterated that the Taiwan question is at the very core of its interests. Though the U.S. has made goodwill gesture by sending several high-ranking officials to resume dialogue with Beijing over recent months, the question is now would be like Washington rethink its approach to Taiwan and the One China principle. Xu Jiaxin, CGTN in Fujian province.
The United States, South Korea and Japan have agreed to deepen military and economic ties in the face of what they say are regional threats to their common interests. U.S. President Joe Biden and his South Korean and Japanese counterparts made the announcement at the end of a trilateral summit at Camp David in Maryland. The three leaders accused China of expanding its military influence in the South China Sea, something that Beijing has long denied. They agreed to hold joint military exercises every year and share information on the DPRK's missile launches.
We're doubling down on information sharing, including on the DPRK's missile launches and cyber activities, strengthening our ballistic missile defense cooperation, and critically, we've all committed to swiftly consult with each other in response to threats to any one of our countries from whatever source it occurs.
"15,000 families have been ordered to leave their homes in the Canadian province of British Columbia as wildfires spread and the local government declares a state of emergency. A blaze in Kelowna in the southern part of the province grew more than 100-fold in 24 hours. 2,500 properties have already been evacuated there. Strong winds are fanning the existing fires and igniting new ones. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said it's been an incredibly difficult summer as the country battles its worst ever wildfire season.
The federal government is closely coordinating with the province of BC, and we will be there to add to whatever resources BC has. And we're all going to get through this incredibly difficult summer together. This is what Canadians do in difficult times, and it's something we're seeing from coast to coast to coast, and we will continue to be there for each other through these difficult moments.
And the fires in British Columbia come as the northern Canadian city of Yellowknife has seen its nearly 20,000 residents evacuated from the path of another approaching blaze. Fire crews are spreading fire retardant and dropping water from the air to try to prevent the flames from reaching the Northwest Territory's capital city. Yellowknife's fire service warns strong winds could blow the blaze towards the city. The death toll from the Maui wildfires in the U.S. state of Hawaii has climbed to 114 after more than 60% of the disaster area has been searched. People in the devastated town of Lahaina say they are frustrated by the response of the authorities and they want to have a bigger say in the efforts to rebuild their town. Our correspondent Greg Navarro now reports.
When Paele Kiakona knew his hometown of Lahaina was burning, his first thought was of his grandmother alone in her house.
I had to ride about 3 miles on a bicycle because there was so much traffic to get into town to go and save my grandmother from her home.
Kekai Keahe was one of the first people to go back into Lahaina to deliver critical supplies to his neighbors. He says that trip involved passing the bodies of people who died in the fire.
It's going to be hard for me, even after we rebuild, to go through the neighborhood and not remember what we saw and what we smelled and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know if I ever going to get past that.
Both men share a concern over how the initial response to the fire was handled. That includes the fact that the sirens in place to warn people of a disaster were never activated. Maui's Emergency Management Agency administrator defended the decision not to sound the siren warning system, saying it's a protocol for tsunamis, signaling to people to move away from the ocean and head to higher ground. In this case, potentially sending them into the fire.
But they got to give us a little bit more credit. I think a little bit smarter than that. You know, we have hurricanes, we have tsunamis, yeah, we have sirens, but we already knew there was a fire on the hill.
If we gave them just a little bit more time, maybe people could have run from the areas that they were burnt from, you know. Maybe, who knows? But every effort should have been put in place to try and save lives.
Maui Emergency Chief Herman Andea resigned this week amid criticism over his decision, citing health reasons. While the search continues for more than 1,000 people still unaccounted for, there are visible signs of attempts to reconnect Lahaina and restore basic services. But Kekai Keahi says he remains frustrated that he and his neighbors are not part of the conversation of how best to help the people of Lahaina.
I use this analogy with a lot of other people, saying that, you know, they're having their meetings at the table and I invite us to the table, but they forget that we own the table. It's our table they're sitting at.
We would rather not work on 2 separate teams. You know, we should all be on the same team, and that is to protect Lahaina, to protect our people, and get people back in their homes as soon as possible.
What many Lahaina residents we spoke with agree on is the impact that countless numbers of volunteers are having on relief efforts, and the outpouring of support that's tough to miss. Greg Navarro, CGTN, Lahaina.
4 people have been arrested in Albania on suspicion of causing fires in a coastal area frequented by tourists. Firefighters and soldiers have been deployed to fight the blaze, which spread over a forested area. Dozens of hectares have been charred, while nearby homes and olive tree plantations were in danger of being destroyed by the blaze. 2 of the men arrested are believed to be farmers. Many farmers in the country set fire to cultivated fields to clear stubble and weeds before sowing a new crop. Around 26,000 people have been evacuated from the Spanish island of Tenerife as firefighters fought to control a new blaze in the north of the island. Some of the evacuees received medical attention at a daycare centre. The fire, which broke out on Wednesday in a mountainous national park amid hot and dry weather, has so far destroyed some 5,000 hectares of land. Category 4 Hurricane Hillary is due to make landfall in Mexico's Baja California shortly, as authorities warn of catastrophic and life-threatening flooding for the peninsula. The storm is then expected to head north towards the United States. Officials in Los Angeles scrambled to move homeless people off the streets and set up shelters in preparation for evacuations. The storm is expected to make landfall in the U.S. on Sunday. It would be the first tropical storm to hit Southern California in 84 years. You're watching CGTN, still to come. Can you imagine a computer being able to read your mind? Welcome to brain-computer interface technology. We look at both its potential and the risks.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with global business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
This week on Razor, searching for dark matter on the ground and far out in space.
Dark matter, we know, it's kind of matter that does not interact through the electromagnetic interaction with ordinary matter. And we know that such a specific kind of exotic matter exists from various cosmological evidence, astrophysical evidence, but we don't know what it's made of.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. The Chinese army has launched military drills around the island of Taiwan. It says they're a warning to separatists. A state of emergency in British Columbia. Thousands have been ordered to evacuate as Canada's wildfires worsen. Delegates from the Western African bloc ECOWAS have arrived in Niamey, the capital of Niger. They're expected to meet with the military chief who took power last month. In the capital, thousands turned up to answer the call from the coup leader to register for his National Defence Force. The move came one day after the ECOWAS military leaders said they are ready for military intervention to topple the regime. The 15th BRICS summit will begin in Johannesburg, South Africa next Tuesday. It's the first in-person meeting of the group of emerging economies since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what can we expect from the summit? Well, our reporter Huang Yue talks to one expert to find out.
This year's BRICS summit has attracted a lot of attention as it's the first time for leaders of the bloc to meet in person since COVID-19. Comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS is a group of emerging markets that contributes over 31% of global GDP growth, surpassing the G7, which is made up of the world's leading developed economies. Many issues will be on the agenda over the course of the 3 days, with one of the hottest topics being the expansion of BRICS membership.
Over 50 countries have shown great interest in joining BRICS, and 23 countries have officially applied to join. Expansion is already a consensus, but it cannot be finished overnight. Details such as criteria and procedures to welcome new members will be discussed during the upcoming meeting.
Another issue that's been heatedly discussed before the summit is de-dollarization. Analysts say there's a trend of local currencies being used as an alternative to the U.S. greenback. Earlier, South Africa's senior BRICS diplomat, Anil Suklal, said the bloc will not discuss a BRICS currency, but deepening trade in local currencies is firmly on the agenda.
Promoting settlement in local currencies is a big issue that will be discussed during the summit. BRICS has emphasized financial cooperation since its establishment and has promoted the reform of the World Bank and IMF, as well as establishing the new development bank. BRICS opposes the hegemony of the US dollar and pursues the reform of the global financial system.
It's been confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin will not attend the gathering in South Africa. Instead, he will take part in the summit via video. The expert said Russia-Ukraine conflict will inevitably be discussed during the meeting, but it will not distract from the goal of promoting development among BRICS members and other emerging economies. Wang Yue, CGTN, Beijing.
We'll be bringing you much more on that summit in this week's agenda as Juliet Mann looks ahead to the BRICS meeting in Johannesburg. That's the agenda, right after the World Today at 16:30 GMT, here on CGTN. China and Denmark have reached a new agreement that will boost cooperation in green technologies. The deal was signed by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Danish counterpart Lars Løkke Rasmussen. Dong Shui has the details.
China and Denmark signed a joint work program on green cooperation in Beijing on Friday, witnessed by the foreign ministers of both sides. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen is on his first official visit to China since assuming his position as the country's foreign minister. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi told Rasmussen that China regards Europe as a comprehensive strategic partner and supports Europe in upholding its strategic independence while playing a greater role in the international arena. He reiterated the importance of continued development, saying a lack of cooperation is the biggest risk and that such risks can be mitigated through a convergence of interests. Minister Rasmussen said bilateral relations between Denmark and China have a long history, calling the two sides close partners. He added Denmark is committed to strengthening cooperation with China, describing the consensus reached on the joint green work plan as a new milestone. He said Danish companies attach great importance to the Chinese market and they look forward to investing more in China. He also praised the 24 new measures introduced by Beijing to attract more foreign investment and said he looked forward to further economic and trade cooperation. Finally, he reiterated that Denmark supports multilateralism and economic globalization as well as EU-China cooperation, which he said is conducive to each other's development. The two sides also shared views on the Ukraine crisis, with Wang Yi reiterating China's position on promoting peace talks and working to build a sustainable security framework in Europe. China's green transition is underway. A goal has been set to become carbon neutral by 2060, and to achieve that objective, China can benefit from some of the most advanced solutions Denmark offers, such as water purification as well as district heating systems, where some of the Danish companies are at forefront. Well, as Wang Yi says, the green cooperation will be beneficial for both sides in achieving the sustainable goals. Dong Xue, CGTN, Beijing.
And China and France have discussed deepening ties and the importance of building a multipolar world. The remarks are made during a phone call between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his French counterpart, Catherine Colonna. Wang said China is ready to restart exchanges in all fields and at all levels and make up ground lost during the pandemic. Colonna expressed condolences for the recent floods in China. She said France and Europe will not accept decoupling or a disruption of industrial and supply chains. 7 people have been killed and 110 others wounded in a Russian missile strike in the northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. Local officials say a 6-year-old child was among the victims. The strikes also damaged a square in the centre of the city, a university building and a local theatre. Former US President Donald Trump plans to skip next week's first Republican primary debate and instead sit for an online interview with a former Fox News presenter. The move, reported by the New York Times, suggests Trump is following through with suggestions he made over the past few months that he would not be attending the event. Recent polls show Trump holding 47% of the Republican vote nationally. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is a distant second with 13%. Now, the idea of computers reading your brain signals may sound like something out of the Matrix, but BCI, or the Brain-Computer Interface, is a technology that really exists. And while its creators say its only purpose is to help people, others are worried. So Yang Chengxi went to see one of the authors of a recent paper published in China who explained the risks.
Well, most of the future risks identified in the report have, in a way, already been explored by sci-fi movies.
Issue number 1, medical safety, a theme explored in the film Ghost in the Shell. It introduces a fictional disease where brain implants cause tissue damage in the head, threatening an entire society of people with cyber brains. Issue number 2, privacy risks. You literally have wires in your brain that retrieve data. In the movie The Matrix, machines have access to human thoughts, memories, and personal information, giving them control of a virtual reality.
Protecting this information and determining who has the authority to access or retrieve it is a potential challenge we may face in the future.
The next issue on the list is the question of who is responsible for the action of a person connected to the technology.
In this process, the signals from the brain belong to the individual, while the processing is performed by another group of people using a separate set of devices. So in this process, the question of who is in control arises.
Last but not least, the proliferation of brain-computer interface could have huge societal implications. Experts say most current applications aim to make up for lost functions in people with disability. But there will come a point where BCI can be used in human enhancements.
It's similar to playing a game. If one player has cheat codes or better equipment, it can lead to an unfair competition. Determining who should be enhanced and when to provide enhancements can introduce problems related to social equity and fair distribution, much like the issue of wealth distribution in our society.
I know thinking about these ideas can be overwhelming, but could the hypothetical scenarios be happening anytime soon? Well, probably not.
The complex thoughts and ideas in our minds cannot currently be accessed unless a person deliberately acts upon them. However, the information we collected remains there. In about 5 years, it might be possible to analyze the data and potentially uncover different outcomes.
Not only is today's BCI unable to read your thoughts, it can't do much to control them either. For example, many of the existing BCI treatments for epilepsy and depression rely on a decades-old procedure called deep brain stimulation. While smart interfaces allow people to better modulate the stimulation, the implants cannot control how other parts of the brain behave.
But in time, BCI technology might go beyond just a tech and medical concept and become a social issue that requires citizens and policymakers to tread more carefully.
Yang Chengxi, CGTN, Beijing.
The World Athletics Championships are underway in the Hungarian capital with more than 2,000 of the world's top athletes vying for medals. Alvaro Martin of Spain captured the first gold of the championships in the 20-kilometre race walk. A thunderstorm delayed some of the competitions in the 9-day event, which kicked off on Saturday. Well, our correspondent Peter Oliver is outside the National Athletics Centre in Budapest, where the championships are taking place. Peter, first world champion after a delayed start.
First world champion, we are really now officially underway. The opening ceremony is going on just behind me. You might be able to hear a little bit of music. We might get some aeroplanes flying over, just to give you a little warning while we're talking to you. But yes, we did get underway with the sport earlier on. Eventually, after a storm delay put us back by 2 hours, it was Alvaro Martin who became the first world champion at this World Championships. His time of 1 hour, 17 minutes and 32 seconds, the fastest time of the year of the 20-kilometre men's race walk. He adds a world title to his European title he picked up last year in Munich. Now, the man who had put in the fastest time so far this year over that distance was China's Zhang Jun. However, he had a pretty disappointing day, finishing 29th overall. He told CGTN afterwards that the weather delay had affected him pretty badly.
The competition was delayed by 2 hours, and this interrupted my rhythm. After walking about 15 kilometers, I started to feel tired. The weather is also quite cold, so I didn't perform well.
It's the turn of the women over the 20 kilometres race walk on Sunday morning, and China have a very strong women's squad indeed. Plenty of women who've already won world championships, including Lui Hong, who is pretty much the legend of the sport. 4 gold world championship medals already for her, and she's the world record holder over 20 kilometres. We are expecting big things, and we'll be keeping a very close eye on it.
And Peter, more golds up for grabs later.
Yes, it's the battle of the big men just behind me in the National Athletics Centre as the men's shot put final will be taking place. It used to be that if you threw 23 metres in the men's shot put, you were pretty much guaranteed to win the gold. That has changed a little bit now as distances go up and up and up, and it is that man, Ryan Crozier of the United States, who's been, well, driving those up. He's now set the world record at 23 metres and 56 centimetres so far this year. expect him to be throwing somewhere near that again tonight on Saturday evening, and you're going to have to basically beat him if you want that gold medal. There's also going to be a gold medal up for grabs in the women's 10,000 metres. That is one of the best tactical races on the track that's out there. 25 laps around the 400-metre track of the Athletics Stadium. One of the most fascinating. When do you go? When do you not? When do you allow your opponent to think that they can break, or when do you hold back and hope to push late on? Fascinating race, and the final gold medals up for grabs are in the 4x400 mixed relay, the only event in which men and women compete together here at the World Championships. Be keeping an eye across all of them, bringing you all the latest when we get it.
Good stuff, Peter. Thanks very much indeed. Peter Oliver there in Budapest for us. Sweden has won third place at the Women's World Cup after beating co-host Australia 2-0. Sweden took the lead in the first half when Fridolina Rolfö put home a penalty. In the second half, Swedish striker Kostavari Asliani shot from the edge of the box to make it 2-0. Australia's fourth place is their best result so far in a Women's World Cup. The tournament ends on Sunday with the final showdown between England and Spain. Well, before we go, a reminder of our top stories. The Chinese army has launched military drills around the island of Taiwan. It says they're a warning to separatists. A state of emergency has been declared in British Columbia. Thousands have been ordered to evacuate as Canada's wildfires worsen. And China and Denmark have reached a new agreement to work together on green technology. The World Athletics Championships are underway in Budapest with more than 2,000 of the world's star athletes vying for gold. And that is the world today. Thanks for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel, on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. More news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's The Agenda with Juliet Mann. For now, from all of the team in London, goodbye.